Now, we just watched the good brother Chico Bean and Icewear Vezo go through a mental workout to process some of their trauma. Now, I want to continue our conversation on mental health with my guest, Dr. Rheeda Walker, psychologist, that's right, and author of The Unapologetic Guide to Black Mental Health. Resmaa Menakem, therapist and author of the New York Times bestseller, My Grandmother's Hands, and a very special guest, Grammy Award winner, author of the book Checking In, as well as the host of the Checking In podcast and mental health care advocate, Michelle Williams. That's right. Hey. First of all, these are three of my favorite people in this space, man, so I'm really happy to have y'all. Dr. Walker, you know, we saw Chico and Icewear, they was at inception. What should be the next steps of their process on their healing journey?
I got to tell you, for me, as a clinical psychologist, it's about thoughts and behavior. So once they've been to inception and feeling more open to looking at their life differently, then see a professional who will help them take control of their life, take control of their thoughts, so that they can then manifest that mental well space or that mental space a little bit more effectively when new things happen, because stuff always happens, right? And we have to know what to do in those moments.
Michelle, do you remember like your awakening moment? Like you saw them, Chico and Icewear had an awakening moment. Do you remember yours?
Oh, my awakening moment would probably be my most recent one in 2018, when I knew I needed to really get serious because the comfort of thoughts of suicide became too regular.
Resmaa, as a black man, when you saw that, what did you think when you saw those brothers building like that?
Well, the first piece, brother, that impacted me was how intimate they were. When you were watching Chico talk about the loss of his mother, you was watching the brother talk about the loss of his friend. What you were watching was, as Sis was saying, was an opening, right, and a possibility, right? What happens to our people so often sometimes is that when that opening shows up, because we've been so hurt, we go right back into protection. And so we have to, as Sis said, what we have to do is not just have an opening, but consistently do something over and over and over again, so we get used to having a sense of resource and intimacy and being with each other.
Okay. How do you think we break this cycle of turning, you know, our trauma into our culture?
Well, I don't think we use these words and these phrases like break,
okay,
right? And what I have a tendency to talk about is the idea of metabolizing, right? Is that when you have these things that show up that don't feel good, one of the first things we want to do is get rid of it. But what we really have to do is create more room so we can actually metabolize it and use it as fuel for our freedom, as opposed to fuel that burns us up.
Ooh. Now, Michelle, you got the Checking In podcast.
Yes, sir.
On the Black Effect Podcast Network.
Oh, Black Effect.
And you got the Checking In book.
Yes, sir.
If I want to check in on people like, you know, Chico and Icewear who want to go on a deeper healing journey, how do I do it without being like intrusive?
Well, first, I want to get to the root of Chico, I believe, who knew the stat of people who have sex without their socks on. That's some other healing work.
Sexual healing.
That's some
That's
other healing work. But I think continuing to create safe places and being a safe person so that person knows that you are with them on their journey.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Michelle's talking about safe spaces, Dr. Walker. You know, black people only make up about 3% of psychologists in the U.S. Why are the numbers so low? And how does that impact us? How do we decrackify the mental health space?
Well, we definitely have a pipeline issue. You know, when people contact me and they're looking for a professional, they're assuming I'm going to refer them to somebody black. And that's important because we don't want to, when we're feeling vulnerable, you don't want to have to talk to somebody to explain racism, to explain what it means to be black, to explain, you know, your day-to-day life. And so what we need are more, not just actually black professionals, but we need more culturally humble white professionals.
Ooh.
Who are...
Expound on that one, Dr. Rheeda Walker. Culturally humble. I always need new words to tell white people. Culturally humble. You need to culturally humble yourself, Mr. White man.
And I mean.
Right now.
Right now. I mean, well, actually, we're past time, right? You know, because for black people, we have to understand everyone's lives in order to survive. You know, we have to be able to navigate all different kinds of spaces. And for white folks who oftentimes have the privilege of just showing up and taking up space, when it looks like that in therapy, there are assumptions that are made about Black folks, and there are assumptions about how racism doesn't affect their lives that we need to be able to ask questions about. People need to be able to talk about racism in therapy. They need to be able to talk about how somebody was microaggressive towards them in therapy without having to explain it. It's a lot.
Do you think you can get an honest opinion from a white person in regard to racism, like if you're talking to a therapist?
Yes.
Okay.
Because like mental health professionals, licensed mental health professionals understand how to communicate in a way that indicates empathy, you know, that shows even if I haven't walked in your shoes, I can be empathic about your experience. And everybody wants to be heard. We don't want to have to explain racism, but we want for the person who's listening to us, who's supposed to be helping us, to be able to understand that this pains me, and I need you to help me with this pain without questioning my pain.
Ooh. Ooh. Brother Resmaa, you want to expound on that?
Yeah. So one of the most important things I think to understand about when you're going in to seek mental health, and you're sitting in front of a white person, white people many times have not dealt. White people many times have not dealt with not only their privilege, but their advantage, right? In a society that's predicated on the white body deeming itself the standard of humanness, it is an advantage to be white. And one of the things that the way that shows up is by white bodies assuming that they know what the problem is, right? And they don't take enough time for the space to actually teach them what they need to know, right? And so what they end up doing is giving answers and giving tips and stuff like that, as opposed to just being with the person. And so I think one of the things that, as Sis was saying, one of the things that we have to begin to do is we have to begin to cultivate the field, so the field can actually push forward what we really want, and that is being with people, not necessarily giving people tips and answers.
Ooh. I want to ask you, Dr. Resmaa, what if you're the type of person who feels like you're good and nothing is wrong? Is it still important to be intentional about addressing your mental health?
It's important, but I think many times the reason why people do that is the framing is off, right? We think that if I'm not running down the street butt-ass naked, then everything's good, right? And the reality is that when you're by yourself in your quiet moments, and as Sis was saying, and I've had suicide stuff too, that when those things are going on, right, even if you can present in front of people that I'm all right, you know that you're not all right. Something's off. And I think we need to stop thinking about mental health as if it's like the biggest thing. Like we only look for like if something really big has happened. It's really those small things where people in your family that love you are looking at you and saying, boy, something wrong, something off. I don't know quite what's off, but something off, right? Those are the times where we have to begin to kind of let our family hold us, right? Not just hold us physically, but just like, I got you, I'm here. Sometimes just to let people know that I'm here with you is enough to get to the next stage and the next moment. So that's what I would say.
Michelle, can you talk about the pivot from being on your own healing journey to now like being an advocate?
Whew. Embracing and confronting everything just face on, head on, knowing that healing is not fun all the time. I don't ever walk out of a lot of therapy sessions, ooh, that was fun.
You're like, that shit hurt.
You know, yes, and a lot of it is heavy, empowering, awakening moments. I attribute healing to like an actual wound that you have, Charlamagne. I say this all the time. Healing does not feel good. It's irritating. It itches. You know, you have to take care of the wound. You have to tend to the wound. And then before you know it, it becomes a scar, but it doesn't hurt anymore. You know?
Beautiful.
You know, Dr. Rheeda, you know, I sent Chico and Icewear Vezo to Inception to get started on their healing journey, but what advice do you have for people who are, you know, looking for a place to start?
You know, it's interesting. I think a lot of people don't realize that even in their places of business where they have full benefits, there is employee assistance. And basically their therapy is already being paid for and they may not realize that it's there. So that's actually one place where I suggest that folks start, but also recognizing the single most important thing that people need for their therapy is for there to be a good fit between the therapist and the patient. And so what that looks like is, first coming up with just a list of folks who are experts, who understand evidence-based practice. I don't think that that's language that is actually mainstream, that there are different therapies for specific kinds of problems, and we have to find the people who are doing that work. And we have to create a list of like 4 or 5 therapists, because sometimes,
That's right.
most of the time, the first person isn't going to work. It's just not going to fit. And a lot of people will say, well, therapy didn't work, and then they just give up. But if you have a list of 5, like you have a list of 5 referrals for, getting your hair done or getting your edge up, you have to have a list of folks that you can go to and say, okay, that one didn't work, let me try this one. This one didn't work. And it might take 6 or 7 tries, which I know is hard, because when you're already in pain, you don't have time to go interviewing folks, but our minds are the single most important thing that we need for our lives in order to be successful. So it's worth investing the time in trying to find that person.
Word. How do you know when it's working, right? Because I was talking at the beginning of the show, and I thought I was over a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I got triggered about 2 or 3 times, having that, just talking to the people. It's like, how do you know when you're actually healed?
Well, your professional will actually help you to come up with your goals for therapy. So because a lot of people just go to therapy because they want to feel better. And that's all they know is I want to feel better. And so the therapist hopefully can say, okay, what would that look like? What will have changed in your life for you to know that therapy is in fact helping? And maybe there are some deep-seated things that you don't have to work on everything at the same time. Therapy is a step-by-step process. So maybe you weren't ready to deal with some of those things, and you have to start with, take some baby steps. We have to be willing to take some baby steps in therapy in order to be successful, to achieve the smaller goals so that we can be ready for those bigger goals.
I need to run up that staircase.
Listen.
In steps.
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Of course, that's why you're here.
Super, 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 super proud of you.
Stop, don't do this.
Thank you for
Super proud of
Thank you.
Super proud of you.
Thank you.
We love you, and we're here for you, and we're just making sure we're going to stay here and to
That's it.
continue to check in on you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. What do you say, Brother Resmaa?
Well, so when you were doing the piece, I saw it happen.
Lord have mercy.
Yeah. And one of the things that's why when I came out, I said, we holding you. One of the things about what we call therapy, I have a tendency to separate therapy and healing, right? Therapy is something that you go to, somebody's trying to help you work through. This is very important. Healing is different. Sometimes we don't recognize the types of healing that are actually going on around us, right? Like when your own resource, like you said, you got triggered, I call it activated. When you get activated, right? Things begin to kind of get smaller. You're like, ooh, something happened there. One of the things that I tell people is that look for your resources. Sometimes when your own individual resources are tapped, you have to tap into sister's resource. You have to tap into sister's, you have to tap into my resource. Even if it's for half a second, if you do that enough, your body will over time recognize what resource actually feels like. That's like your question. You said, well, how do I know? I thought I was over that. Well, the reason why you even recognize it now is because you have done enough work to even recognize it. That's healing, brother. That's healing. And so what I would say to you is, it is not a failure when you recognize that something else hurts. It is an opportunity.
Where?
So.
It was that Can I Get a Drop video. It was looking at my old face triggered me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Stop it.
It did. It did.
I saw it.
Now, I'm glad that y'all here too, Resmaa, because one of my favorite books is, all of y'all books are one of my favorite books, but My Grandmother's Hands, at the end of each chapter, you have these practices.
Yes, brother.
Would you do us a favor and lead us through one of those exercises?
Absolutely.
Because I damn sure need it tonight.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And the audience, y'all get in on this too. I mean, don't come down here, but y'all do it from up there. All right?
So here's one of the first things. So one of the things that happened through the process of land theft and enslavement, especially enslavement of our people, one of the things that happened is that we got organized around the trauma, right? So we had to override it in order to keep going, right? So all of the brutality that was happening, all of the rape that was happening, all of the just degradation that was happening, we couldn't pay attention to that. We had to override it and keep moving. So over time, what happens is that people get organized around that, and when trauma, time decontextualizes trauma. So trauma in a person can look like personality over time. Ooh. Trauma in a family can look like family traits over time. Trauma in a people can look like culture over time, right? So one of the things that we, So one of the things that happens is that we walk around, black people in particular, walk around with this sense of bracedness, that the next shoe is getting ready to drop or something is getting ready to happen, right? So this practice is to kind of help with that, okay? It's an orienting practice. So I want everybody to sit on the edge of their seats for a second. Just come to the edge of your seat. And all I want you to do is just look straight ahead first. And then just notice. Notice any tightening, any opening, any locking down. Not defective. You are not defective. Something happened and continues to happen to your people. Now, what I want you to do is look over one shoulder and look behind you. And just notice, just look behind you. Just breathe. There's no particular way to breathe. Just look behind you. Now, come back, look forward. Look around. Now, look over the other shoulder. And this is orienting. Our people could not orient. Now look straight ahead. Now just notice just that piece. Notice if anything settled or dropped, even if it's just a little bit. When I'm in my office and I'm doing these practices, one of the things that I tell black people is that you have to orient to the environments that you come into. You have to find the windows and the exits. Our people could not find the windows and the exits. If we left, we died. If we stayed, we died. Now your bodies can actually find the exits. So find the exits. So even right now, look for the exits. If it's behind you, if it's in front of you, find the exits, the ways to leave, and breathe. That's it. The reason why I do that is because we're so conditioned to brace, and we're so conditioned and we're stuck. It's like it actually shows up in an embodied sense, this braceness. So we have to be about the practice of looking and orienting, and particularly behind us, just in that second to let our bodies know nothing's behind me. It's very important.
So good.
So basically, there's nothing wrong with being paranoid.
There's,
I do that all the time anyway. I thought that was damn
well, what
good.
I'm asking you to do with this, not like that.
Okay.
Slow it down.
Slow it down.
Not this. Not that.
Yeah.
Just slow it down. And then notice what shows up when you slow it down.
Got you.
That's it.
Wow,
right.
man. I'd like to thank our guests, Dr. Rheeda Walker, Resmaa Menakem, and Michelle Williams for joining us tonight. And remember, this Sunday, the Mental Wealth Expo, you'll see all these people and more from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Marriott Marquis in Times Square. Brought to you by me and my foundation, the Mental Wealth Alliance. And it's free and open to the public.